Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this November 20th Sammamish Planning Commission meeting to order. We have apparently an exciting meeting this evening because we have quite a few people joining us here at City Hall, so that's a big deal. Let's start out with roll call. Syed Safavian. Here. Hisham El-Kawad.
Here.
Mike Briscoe.
Here.
I am Mark Boffman. I'm here. John Bachman.
Here.
Ajay Chakrapani.
Here.
And we are missing Sudha Sunkara, and we'll see if she joins on the screen, maybe like she did last time. Next, approval of the agenda. Tonight on the agenda, we have two topics. First one is a discussion of traffic and the traffic model, and the other one is I think what's going to be a fairly brief discussion on the town center sub-area plan. Anyone have any comments on the agenda? I will mention for everyone in the room that if you haven't kept up with rapt excitement with the Planning Commission over the last year, the way we do public comment now is we do it at the front to match other community meetings. So the public comment is only at the beginning of the meeting, and then we have our regular meeting. So we did that to match, we were asked to do that to match City Council and others. So I'll just let you know that that's, in the past, it may have been different. That's how we're doing it now. That's how the agenda works. Okay, approval of the minutes from our November 6th meeting. Anybody have any comments or corrections from the November 6th meeting minutes? Okay, no corrections, so we'll call those approved. Next, here we are, public comment. So if anyone would like to make public comment, I see a few people sign the sign-in sheet. We'll do everybody in the room first. Who would like to go first? It looks like Eileen is first on the list. And everybody's handwriting is pretty decent, so I might get it right. Oh, well, somebody else can go first if they'd like to. Any volunteers? How about Debbie or Paul? One of you two want to go first? No, here we go. And just as a reminder, state your name, so for the record recording of this and for the YouTube 8 million views that it's going to receive, they'll know who you are.
I'm Denise Darnell, lived at Sammamish since 2003. I just wanted to acknowledge all of your hard work that you were doing in the last several times of our meetings that you had in Planning Commission, as far as really looking at the town center information, really dissecting it, asking such great questions. I think a lot of us as residents who watch it online or who do follow you appreciate the time and your excellent questions that you took with all of that. I am part of the Save Our Sammamish little group that mainly our purpose is to help educate residents and to also be a representative for those people who are too busy and can't come. So I know people are really looking forward to having further discussions about keeping our tree canopy, hopefully hiring an urban forester in Sammamish, since we are called the Tree City. It feels like we should have an urban forester, especially because our little friends down in Issaquah have one. And I know it's important for our cities to work together. And then also really looking at our residents and our traffic and caring about not having the town center get too big so that our community can keep our community feel and also have it be a reasonable type of building. And we are just looking forward to continuing to come to your meetings, and we're excited about your collaboration with the City Council, because I want you to know that the residents really value the Planning Commission as well as the Sustainability Commission. We realize that you worked hard to get on these committees and you're giving up a lot of your time and also spending a lot of time reading. So we look forward to the fact that you can hopefully interact more with the City Council and really be an advisory force, because you also represent a lot of the residents. That's why I think you joined the Planning Commission and Sustainability, for those that had done that too. So I think that's an important thing. My personal pet project is improving the city newsletter, and I'm excited as a resident to maybe have some say in that. We would love the city newsletter to be more of a representation of what's happening in the city. If you look in Issaquah's emails, it's very informative about upcoming events. And Sammamish has a lot going on. Like there's a Sammamish symphony I didn't even know about. Our theaters right now, like Eastlake High School is showing Into the Woods, and Skyline has a World War II play happening, and a lot of residents don't know. So I'm really hoping our newsletter can transform where schools and nonprofits could list their activities, and we can all learn more about it to help build that community that we all care so deeply about. Thank you very much, and yay for the trees.
Thank you. Eileen, are you warmed up yet? Go ahead.
Thank you for going first. I am going to pass out what I'm going to say because there's numbers and I'm very nervous, and so I don't want to screw them up.
You don't need to be nervous. We all embarrass ourselves on cable television every 2 weeks.
And there's stuff on a little bit more on the back, so. Okay. All right. So good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Eileen Fitzgerald, and I'm here to express my concern over the newly implemented restrictions regarding the district standards for residential density and dimensions. My husband and I own a home in the Waverly Hills neighborhood, which we've lived in for the past 24 years, and we had hoped this was going to be our forever home. Unfortunately, last year my husband had a health scare and ended up having a triple bypass surgery, so after several complications, 14 days in the ICU, and he came home for a very long recovery, and it was then we realized that if we were going to stay in our home forever, we needed to make some modifications. The good thing is that our home is a daylight basement, so it's possible to live on the main floor and not have to go downstairs, but we're limited on outdoor space, so our thought was to do what our neighbors next door did a few years back, which was to extend our current deck, and which is just off the kitchen, and then extend the roof so we could easily have an easily accessible two-season area. Our permit proposal was to add 190 square feet of deck and extend our current roof 59 square feet to partially cover it. So unfortunately, after hiring an architect and submitting for a permit, we learned that due to the January 1st change, limiting all residential homes to no more than 3,000 square feet and no more than 40% hardscape coverage, we're not allowed to do a thing. Right now, our original unmodified home is 538 square feet over what current code allows, which means our home could not even be built under today's restrictions. Under last year's code, our current original unmodified home was 756 square feet under. To put it another way, under the previous code for our 11,274 square foot lot, we could have covered 4,509 square feet with flooring and deck under the previous code. Under today's code, we can only cover 2,650 square feet. That's 1,294 square feet of area and lot value that we've lost. And King County uses an evaluation of $350 approximately per square feet, which means our property value has effectively been reduced by almost $453,000. I'm sure this wasn't the intent of the council when this change was originally discussed, because every improvement a homeowner like myself makes only increases the property taxes and the property value, and which in turn contributes to the city's overall budget. The other thing I'd just quickly like to mention on that is that we only received this 30,000 square foot stoppage on the third round of requests for our permit. This is after the planning folks kicked it back 3 times, asking for an additional geological study, a wind study for the railings, additional architectural requests. And I think the footprint is something that should have been looked at first before asking for an additional $5,500 in studies. I'm asking the Planning Commission to please reconsider this regulation and allow for older homes and older residents. give us the ability to make reasonable accommodations to age in place and not have to move out of our wonderful city of Sammamish. Thank you.
You did great, Eileen.
Thank you.
Who's next? Okay, if there's nobody else, yeah, go ahead. Well, some people said yes, some people said no. I thought I'd just let people decide to go.
Thanks. I'm Debbie Treen and been in Sammamish since 2010. This might be the last. Do council members get to speak to you at these meetings, or are we supposed to do something else? I'm still learning, so we'll find out. But I'm really looking forward to the traffic conversation tonight. That's always been one of my biggest concerns the whole time I've been involved in land use over the last 30 years. Traffic is a conundrum for sure. So I really appreciate the Planning Commission bringing in the traffic consultant and spending your time, to dig in further on behalf of the public, because we aren't, you have access to more information than we do. There are three areas, there's probably dozens, but there's three areas in particular that I don't know if we'll get answers tonight, but if we could, I would love it. One is how concurrency gets applied to the town center as it develops. So what happens if we approve a couple of permits and then at that point we can't fix the roads anymore because we don't have the money or whatever? What happens then? So how do we control the way the project that's being built is matched with the road needs that are known? So that's my first question. And the second is, what can you cover, what is mitigation? Is it just the impact fee, or is there mitigation for roads that are being impacted beyond? Now, I don't know how that gets applied in Sammamish when there is a road that needs improvement and it's impacted by a developer. How do you determine the amount of mitigation? And then last, in a more practical way, we really need traffic counts for every intersection and every movement within the intersection in order to assess the function of the intersection. And I think we are using averages in maybe in all cases. And so you could have a left turn movement that is completely gridlocked and waits through 3 cycles to go, but yet if everything else is moving fine, that intersection averages out to a level C or whatever, and it's fine. So I would like to see the traffic counts identified by the specific movements. And the other side of that is also, it looked in the study in the final SEIS that we only looked at the intersections that were directly related to the town center. But I thought in a comprehensive traffic analysis, you would see where are those trips going? Are they going to Microsoft? Are they going to Bellevue? Are they going downtown? And you would assess the entire system for how it's being impacted, not just the few roads that are right around the town center. So if you could address those with the traffic consultant tonight, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. And I will say, even though it may shock some people, even city council members are invited to the Planning Commission meeting. Who else? Paul? Yeah.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners and City staff. Heather Murphy-Rains, 20-year resident, SOS member. I want to begin with genuine appreciation of all the public commentary I've made this year at this commission. It was the one place where I felt heard, respected, and taken seriously. That matters, and I thank you for your professionalism and welcoming openness. Tonight I want to address a concern in the community. There's a growing sense of non-transparency in our planning and traffic data process, a lack of clear explanations, not wonky ones, but clear, that we can understand, distrust in our current traffic model, and most troubling, residents feel gaslit about Sammamish traffic. Over and over, residents are told congestion is just school traffic, or that if parents behave differently or teens stop selfishly driving, everything would be fine. That narrative simply does not match the lived experience of thousands of people, and school traffic is traffic. Transit is also repeatedly proposed as the fix-all, even though the route's frequency and commute times make it impractical for many working families. And with the pervasive budget cuts, it's likely not coming. Just last month, it took me 28 minutes to drive from Trossachs to Gray Barn at 7:30 a.m. No schools in session on that route, no accidents, no weather issues, just normal congestion. And I know it's not in Sammamish, but I chose that route because downtown Sammamish was far longer. Driving onward to Microsoft would have been over an hour from Trossachs, and forget Amazon. Residents are living in reality that is not being acknowledged. When official explanations don't align with what people see every day, it creates frustration and distrust. Traffic is rising again as employers reinstate back to office mandates, something happening region-wide. But in Sammamish, this reality collides with major pressures: ongoing redevelopment and growth in town center, new GMA housing capacity and affordable housing targets, a future high school on 228th, which may not even be needed, but probably will get built, and a 2-lane road network limited by topography. This raises serious questions, especially about emergency evacuation. I also want to raise another question circulating widely. Why was COVID pandemic era outdated data and traffic counts used in town center planning, as well as in evaluating 228th changes to narrow lanes and decreased speed limits, while claiming it would have no effect on commutes? Was the worry that using current realistic 2025 data that might have triggered concurrency issues? And if so, concurrency isn't a barrier to growth, it's a safeguard, a protection, a tool intended to ensure infrastructure keeps pace with development. If the recent election showed anything, it's that the residents do not feel our infrastructure is adequate right now, let alone with additional growth, and is precisely why the GMA was created more than 30 years ago, to give local governments tools to manage growth responsibly and to protect communities from the consequences of overdevelopment without adequate services, roads, or safety capacity. Residents are not asking for anything extraordinary, just asking for what the law intends: transparency in data sources, clarity in the most accuracy in chosen methodology or model. I think Debbie mentioned this: timely and accurate traffic counts that reflect actual conditions. And yes, again, school traffic is traffic. And planning decisions that acknowledge reality, not best case scenarios that support a political perspective to a current council might hold. Our community cares deeply about Sammamish. Sustainable, responsible growth should not erode our quality of life or create safety risks. And thank you for listening. I know you guys are not the problem, so I just want to appreciate and listen. Just have us listen. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Who else? Now Paul's ready to go.
Mic is on. All right. Hello, Planning Commissioners. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. My comment tonight is about something that I haven't specifically talked about, but it's a part of what I've gotten on the record over the last many years. I call it HST plus, all capitals: housing, services, and transportation plus a lot more. However, our community isn't at HST plus, nor has it ever been. Where are we? Capital T, small h. Our community has focused, almost to the point of obsession, on transportation far more than housing over 25 years. What is the little h of large T, H? It's regional growth that the community begrudgingly deals with and really doesn't want. And I agree with that. By the way, I totally support rigorous deep dives into transportation, citywide and in centers. Very important issues that you'll be hearing about tonight. However, there is more. Transportation is but one leg of a four-legged stool to evaluate land uses citywide and in centers. The other legs are fiscal implications for residents and the city, which is about 80% of the upsides if we alleviate housing needs. And development interests get about 20% or less of those upsides. Many kinds of services are the third topic our community needs, not just for what is here today, but for how we choose our housing supplies over time, primarily in centers for the services. And four, there's over 30 other different consequences, which is the plus in HST. And I've turned those consequence lists in several times. Transportation is a major overarching issue. There's no doubt about it. But there's an even larger underarching issue. The large H is housing supplies optimized to meet regional and internal needs. Both. That's what hasn't happened. External housing needs are state mandated and county implemented regional growth. Internal housing needs are local within Sammamish. Citywide housing imbalance. Gee, we've never done that as a city. Over the last 25 years, our bedroom community focus has been on external regional growth and almost no focus to quantified housing factors to set internal housing need numbers. Tonight is a deep dive on transportation. Transportation matters greatly, but HST plus all matters. It's high time we do a rigorous study on internal housing needs and services, fiscal implications, and also evaluate over 30 other consequences, then set citywide and centers land use. Authentic housing and services guide transportation, not vice versa. We need to break being stuck on big T, small h, and move into large HST plus and consider the whole city and our centers. Appreciate the chance to speak. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Isabel Morocco, 10-plus years resident of Sammamish. Next week is Thanksgiving, and we here in Sammamish have a lot to be thankful for in this gorgeous city. And the citizens, the residents, have even more to be thankful for you guys, the Planning Commission, and the work that you've put in. So I came here tonight to thank you again for your stellar integrity and caring for the city's residents, and we really appreciate it. And I don't know if you ever hear much about it, but your work has been just awesome. Thank you.
Oh. Calories at Thanksgiving, that's just what I need. Thanks, Isabel. Anybody else want to make comments? Yeah, and now the new standard has been set, so I hope you have a gift to bring. Anybody else? Lena, is there anybody on the meeting?
Yes, we have one hand raised online. Mary, I am going to promote you to panelists now.
Good evening, Planning Commission and everyone in the room and those that watch online and or later. My name is Mary Wichter. I've lived in the city of Sammamish for 25 years in the same house. And I wanted to, Paul Stickney had spoke about housing services and traffic or transportation. I wanted to speak a little bit about housing because housing is what's going to drive transportation. So I looked back at the September 18th meeting of the Planning Commission of this year and the July 17th meeting. And in those public comments and topics, I had spoken about don't worry about whether it's 2,000 or 4,000 houses. What you need to do is worry or to consider what is the best way to have different types of housing. For example, if you take 1,800 single-family homes and develop in a 2,000 housing limit town center area, it can have the effect of 7,200 homes being built because each large single-family home has about 4 times the amount of traffic and or impact on schools as smaller, different, diverse units do. So I had sent into the Planning Commission some links and summaries. And then in the September meeting, framework, who has been one of the good consultants that the city's been using on a number of things. They spoke on Town Center, and in that they had a new slide or drawing, which was done through work by Urban 3, which is pretty well known, and it's one of the slides on things to get right and on financial feasibility, because whatever you do, you need it to be financially working. And the only thing I think that can help financial sustainability is for housing to be done well. So in the chart, they have single family homes at about $7,000 worth of municipal tax per acre. Townhomes make about $19,000 in rounded numbers, municipal tax per acre. And Sky Apartments, which is a condominium type thing up at the top there on Southeast 4th Street, it makes $43,000 municipal tax dollars per acre. And the measurements are used by 3 from King County data currently for this city. And then they give one example of like a standalone commercial, and that only has about 8,400 municipal tax dollars per acre, but it also brings in sale tax. So I think if you look at those, you're going to find that the dwelling units for stacked mixed housing or multi-use areas really outperforms on what the city can get. It uses way less in terms of acreage, and it also doesn't require as many roads or water pipes or sewer pipes and other services. So I hope that you guys will look at that and re-review those materials. I did email them in, and thank you for the time tonight. Also, your clock's not showing, but I'm at 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mary. Anybody else, Lena?
No more comments online.
All right. And I want to say thanks, everybody, for joining us this evening. And for those that made comments, we don't always get very many folks in the room with us, and we really appreciate you joining and making comments. And I would encourage you, those of you who are sitting on this side of the dais, not that side of the dais, to make sure you also show up to the city council meetings and advocate for what you believe in. That's really an important thing for all of us. So thank you for being here. Okay, let's jump into our main first topic for this evening, which is the traffic discussion. I admit I don't know if Auditor David's introducing, so let's go ahead and jump into it.
Good evening, Chair and Vice Chair and Commissioners and the community. We're really excited to provide you an overview of transportation planning and to showcase all of the great efforts that our collective teams are working on for engineering, traffic engineering, and Sammamish transportation planning. So part of the meeting today is as a follow-up to the September 18th Planning Commission meeting. This is meant to be an informational presentation. We'll provide a wide variety of tools that are commonly used in transportation planning and an overview of our modeling methodology. You'll find the presentation tonight Lay will provide a little bit of oversight into some of the recap of our thoughtful questions that you've submitted along with the community. Those questions helped form the presentation before you this evening, so we're really appreciative of those questions and insight. And the presentation this evening is broken up into 5 major categories. So long-range transportation planning, and we'll cover our transportation master plan, how we plan for capital improvement projects, both at a 2012 and 6-year level, sub-area planning, our development review toolkit, and our traffic modeling toolkit. Before we get further into the details, I'd like to introduce the team. And I realize I think I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Audrey Starcy. I'm the Director of Public Works for the city. Very thankful to be joined by my colleagues this evening. To my right is Andrew Spiliotis. He is the city's Senior Transportation Planner. He joined the city earlier this year. Very lucky to have Andrew on board. He has over 16 years of transportation planning experience in local and regional government. And his experience specifically includes overseeing long-range and specialized transportation studies and overseeing transportation projects, programming and project developing. He also has extensive experience evaluating development proposals for transportation requirements and reviewing transportation impact analysis, or TIAs, for very large projects. He's currently leading the city's efforts for the Transportation Master Plan update that is underway and set to be completed at the end of 2026, as well as our transit enhancement studies, which you'll learn a little bit more about this evening as well. I'm joined to my left by Lei Wu. She is our city engineer. Her role blends her engineering expertise with planning, policy, and strategy. She is the city's engineering expert and infrastructure expert, and very happy to have her on board on the Sammamish team. She joined us earlier this year from the Seattle Department of Transportation and is currently leading key projects for the city in 2025 and 2026, including a significant update to our right-of-way code and our public works standards update. She has also worked, prior to joining the city, has also worked on her own as a consultant and CEO, and has also worked at the city of Redmond, where she led the city's transportation master planning effort as well. In addition, she served on the City of Bellevue's Transportation Commission for 5 years, chaired the commission for 2 years, as well as served on King County Metro Transit Advisory Board and the City of Bellevue's Wilburton District Vision City Advisory Committee. It's a long title. Very happy to have Lay on board. To the left of Lay is Wintana Miller. She is joining us and has worked with the city for years. She is a principal at DKS, and she's a principal at transportation engineer with over 20 years of experience. She leads DKS Associates Seattle Office Transportation and Operations Group, and she specializes in traffic planning, analysis, operations, travel demand forecasting, and feasibility analysis. She manages the city's transportation planning and traffic engineering on-call contract that Sammamish has with DKS, and has led the most recently, and very excitingly, the adopted bicycle and pedestrian mobility plan, and has worked with Sammamish the last few years on the city's very first transportation master plan, as well as our transit plan. We're also joined this evening by Ben Stabler. He is with DKS. I'm not sure if you're able to see him right now online, but Ben is DKS's National Director of Modeling and Analytics. Ben has over 23 years of experience in transportation modeling and planning. He's worked with agencies throughout the region, state, and country, and he is active at the national level in the development of best practices to advance the industry. He's based out of Portland, but grew up on the east side and frequently returns. So very lucky to have the team here tonight to present. I'm going to hand it over to Wintana.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a little bit of background on DKS. We were established in 1979. DKS provides specialized transportation planning, design, and engineering services to public agencies around the country. We employ over 150 professionals in offices in Washington, Oregon, California, Idaho, and Texas. Locally, we've served the Seattle market for over 25 years, working with clients including Seattle, Bellevue, Redmond, Kirkland, Issaquah, all your neighbors, as well as Sammamish, obviously, and more. Doing corridor studies, long-range planning, modeling and intersection operations, safety analysis, transit planning, resiliency planning, as well as signal lighting and intelligent transportation system design. So a variety of services. We have been supporting the city of Sammamish in recent years as your current on-call transportation planning and traffic engineering consultant. Through that work, we've acted as extension of staff on traffic impact analysis, scoping and review. We've led modeling updates for the Synchro, Sidra, and the Zoom models, which we'll talk about more today. We've also supported the city in, as Audrey already mentioned, developing the transportation master plan that was adopted last year. Before that, we developed the transit plan, and we just recently completed the bicycle and pedestrian mobility plan. We've supported the town center sub-area plan update by providing forecasting and intersection operation analysis. And we're here today just to provide some background on our modeling toolkit and address your questions. Thanks. And I think hand it to Lay.
Thank you, Wintana.
No, it's not going. There it goes.
Okay. Well, it's working now. In order to support a growing city, transportation planning effort happens continuously over time. So the intent of this roadmap is to capture key components along the transportation planning horizon. So during this presentation, we'll unpack major components in this roadmap. So please bear with me as I spend a few minutes in walking through this roadmap. So look into the, oh my gosh, okay. So everything's the comprehensive plan is the North Star for us. This plan looking out for 20 years, establish the overarching community vision and priorities. Transportation is an important element of the community's fabric. The Transportation Master Plan, aka the TMP, established the transportation vision and investment strategies to support the comprehensive plan growth strategy. In 2024, the team completed the city's first ever TMP. So the TMP is a living document. We are already working to update, to add new components to the plan itself. It includes updates to the transportation, the TMP, Transit Access Enhancement Plan, and as Audrey mentioned, a newly adopted ped and bike mobility plan by Council this past Tuesday, and the payment management strategic plan. So for policies in plans to be enforceable, code and standards need to be in alignment with those policies. And that is exactly what we are working on right now, a major overhaul to code and standards. So moving on from citywide plans to geographically specific areas, sub-area plans can be developed to provide to study unique characters of specific areas and to provide vision and implementation strategies specific to areas. In a similar vein, corridor plans can also be developed to provide a master plan of improvements across the whole corridor and how different pieces can be implemented over time. That is called phasing plan. So in order to implement all those long-term plans and put transportation improvements on the ground, both public projects, that is what's included in the capital improvement program, and private developments need to build transportation improvements over time. So that's how we collectively make improvements to the transportation system. So that's how this roadmap works. So we're gonna, before we go through each component of this roadmap, I wanna kind of just recap. No, sorry. Recap the questions from you and key questions from the community, if this would work for me, okay? No, okay, yeah, okay. So you have asked many thoughtful questions. A lot of your questions are about the modeling input, process, and output. We totally understand that it's very important for you to have a good grasp of the modeling tool and results themselves, so that the modeling results are one of the tools for you to use when tackling policy questions and serving as an advisor collectively to council on policy decisions. And some of your questions touch on important multimodal travel improvements, such as funding for walking, biking, and transit improvements, and regional transit integration. Lastly, some of your questions touch on important policy goals, such as safety and connectivity. The team studied each question very carefully, and we incorporated our responses into this presentation. That our objective is to address your questions holistically. So with that, I am going to turn it to Andrew to go through the transportation planning process.
Thank you, Lei. So I'll be talking through transportation planning. The transportation planning portion of the presentation will cover how long and short-range planning occur simultaneously and complementary. So I was going to speak a little bit about how the city plans to implement multimodal transportation networks. So the slides that come will touch on the transportation identified in the Transportation Master Plan and how that is implemented through that plan, other long-range plans, sub-area plans, the capital improvement plan, and then through development proposals as well, very similar to Lei's roadmap she just covered. So First, I want to talk a little bit about the TMP and how it relates to the comprehensive plan. So the state legislation, the Growth Management Act, requires the city adopt and update a comprehensive plan. And so as part of that, you could either have a transportation element to the plan, or what the city has is a separate transportation master plan instead. And so whenever the comp plan or the TMP is updated, Puget Sound Regional Council is responsible for reviewing and certifying those plans to make sure it is in adherence with the Growth Management Act requirements. And another piece of those requirements are that the comp plan must be updated every 10 years with a full update, and then at the 5-year mark, an implementation report update. Okay, so a little stick there. Yes. All right, so what does the TMP include in terms of its contents? It outlines the vision, that 20-year vision for all modes of transportation. This plan was adopted in December 2024 and included a year-long process with a lot of community engagement as part of developing that vision. There are goals and policies that work towards the vision. There's a existing and conditions analysis, future conditions analysis, and then there's also an implementation section as well. So I'll be speaking to those at a high level in these slides that come. So what is the vision that the TMP outlines? It is that the city of Sammamish envisions a future transportation system that serves all users and modes of travel by offering a safe and welcoming transportation network that optimizes connectivity and efficiency, aligns with the climate action plan and sustainability goals of the city, maintains fiscal sustainability, and enhances the community. So there's a series of 4 goals that are shared between the comp plan and the TMP. And there's also a series of policies. We just have a small sample on this slide, but there's way more in the actual document itself. What these goals are briefly is to provide an efficient multimodal transportation network, to invest in systems that support growth and offer mobility options, to maintain a system in a state of good repair, and to minimize the impacts to the natural environment. So I mentioned, the TMP includes existing conditions analysis and a future conditions analysis. Part of that future conditions analysis is looking at multimodal level of service and vehicle level of service. DKS will be speaking to vehicle level of service later, so I'll just be touching on multimodal in this section. So the TMP is required to identify that multimodal level of service for bicycles, pedestrians, and transit as part of the Growth Management Act. So we're meeting those requirements of the Act, but it also helps us in identifying projects where we have deficiencies in level of service. When we are designing a project, it's also something we look at when determining what facility type might work best. And then we'll be continuing to do work around performance metrics, and that'll be something we look at as well as part of that. So bicycle and pedestrian level of service are pretty similar in how they're measured for multimodal level of service. This standard applies to arterial roadways, being principal arterials, minor arterials, and collector arterials. And it scores those roadways with a color score of green, yellow, or red. Green is if you meet the level of traffic stress standard and have facilities. Red is if you're lacking, yellow being a hybrid of those. And the score is based on looking at what facilities are existing, what that roadway is in terms of how much volume you have, what the speeds are, and then based on that, if it's meeting a level of traffic stress standard, which is essentially looking at how much buffer do you have between the facility for bicycles or pedestrians and what buffer it is and what that width is separating, or for the facility itself. And so for pedestrians, it's pretty much the same exact thing as it is for bicycles. And then for transit, it's a little bit different. We do a half-a-mile buffer around bus stop pairs and then score between green, yellow, and red based on the presence of facilities. With green, you've got a pretty full bike ped network. Red, you've got more limited facilities, and yellow's right there in the middle. I want to start wrapping up this section, talking a little bit about what work we have coming up, which has been touched on a little bit already in 2026. So this transit plan we adopted in 2024 identified a bunch of locations for crosswalks and for bus stop enhancements. This study staff is doing internally. The transit access enhancement study will prioritize those locations and start costing out and developing discrete projects for programming consideration. And then the TMP update we'll be doing this year will also be looking at mobility hubs, connectivity, performance metrics, and project programming, which I'll touch on a little bit more in a little bit. And as I mentioned earlier in the other slides around the comp plan, we're going forward after this update, we're looking to sync those feature updates with the 5-year update and the 10-year update of the comp plans in 2029 and 2034. So the last thing I want to touch on in this section is around project programming. Currently, the way we program projects is we have a 20-year wish list, if you will, in the TMP, which is not constrained by anticipated revenues. And then we have a fiscally constrained projects plan, which Audrey will talk more about in a second, called the Transportation Capital Improvement Program. And that looks 6 years out and balances a bunch of different variables to constrain that plan. As part of the TMP update, we're going to take a new look at what some of our funding priorities are for our ongoing programs and different types of projects. And then that'll help inform us with how we want to refresh the 20-year list. And we'll also look at, recently adopted plans like the bike ped plan, that upcoming transit access study, and others to refresh the project list. And then new for the TMP, we won't just be fiscally constraining, looking out 6 years, we'll look out years 7 to 12 as well to develop our first 12-year project funding list that's constrained. So with that, I'll turn it over to Audrey to talk more about the capital improvement program.
Thank you, Andrew. As Andrew mentioned, we do have a 6-year capital improvement program. We'll be expanding that to take a look at 12 years out going forward from 2027 onward as we look at those efforts in 2026. Currently, just wanted to take a few steps back for how we plan for capital projects. Everything starts, as you may have guessed, with the city's vision and its goals that are defined in the city's comprehensive plan and in the transportation master plan. We also have a storm and surface water comprehensive plan as well. Within those plans are strategies for implementation, programs, and projects. Those are then evaluated across different with scoring and placed in either a 6-year list or an unconstrained list, and then, of course, going forward, a 12-year list as well. Wanted to also point out before I move to the right of the screen, on the left of the screen is some types of the inputs that we received as we're looking at new projects. We've had multiple projects that have come in with a request for the community, or that have come in with a lot of input from a basin plan or different plans that we're looking at. Those are scored, those are looked at by staff. The project limits are defined, they're evaluated. We look at risk with those plans and how they can be implemented, and those are analyzed and put into our master plans as well as our 6-year plans. As you move forward through the flow chart, as you work through the 6-year plans, those are, of course, incorporated into our citywide CIP. Those are planning documents, and then budget is authorized for different phases of the project with the city's 2-year budget cycle. This quick graphic takes a look beyond just planning for projects, and once we move past the planning, I want to talk a little bit about how projects are implemented. So the end result is infrastructure that's on the ground that can be utilized by the community. As you can look right here, the phases that the community might see the most are design and construction. Those are the smallest of these pies of this chart. Majority of this chart as something moves through design phase and construction. There's a warranty and closeout period before it's fully turned over to the city, and then there's a maintenance period, and at some point, depending on different lifespans of the assets, we begin to look at rehabilitating or replacement of that asset, and of course then that's all folded back into our 6-year planning efforts. As Andrew mentioned, The 6-year plans truly implement the vision of the TMP, as well as other planning efforts such as a sub-area plan or a corridor plan. We have project-specific evaluation that is set for both transportation and stormwater projects, so they are evaluated independently based on different criteria and goals. We also are updating our how we look at bike and sidewalk, bicyclists and pedestrian mobility improvement projects. That was a recommendation from the recently adopted Bike and Pedestrian Mobility Plan. Within those plans is where we balance project costs and phasing of projects. We would love to build things quickly, but they take 6 to 12 years usually to plan, design, go through permitting with all of our regulatory agencies and our own permits, and then finally move forward through construction and warranty periods. So it takes a long time to build infrastructure that's added to the community. This is also an opportunity for us to identify funding gaps. So it might be an opportunity for us to look outward as hopefully we can have some funding partnerships from grants and other agencies. We try to align our projects as much as we can across transportation and stormwater and parks as well. And just one more thing, our 6-year project list, or CIP, is an annual requirement by Washington State Department of Transportation. We are required by RCW to transmit that list every year to the state. This is just a quick snapshot of some of our capital programs and categories. So within the 6-year transportation capital plan, we have numerous ongoing programs. Those are something that there's funding allocated for every year. Most of these see design and construction sometimes in the same year. These programs allow us to bundle design and construction phases so that we can utilize resources a little bit more efficiently and deliver projects to the community faster. The pictures up on the right-hand corner of your screen are from our ADA barrier remediation program this year, and the picture on the bottom of your screen is an overlay that was completed as part of our pavement management program this year. Projects that are not within ongoing programs are placed into a category. The 4 categories are on the bottom left of your screen. Those are placed within the outcome that the project is intended to provide. We're often asked how are capital projects funded. All of our transportation capital projects are funded through a few mechanisms. They are all available online for your review. Council just approved the 6-year plan last Tuesday, as well as the mid-buy adjustments and amendments. Our capital projects are balanced to 2 sources within the 340 fund, or the Transportation Capital Fund. Those 2 sources are the Real Estate Excise Tax, or REIT, and Transportation Impact Fees, or TIF. Those fees are often referred to as street impact fees or traffic impact fees as well. Capital projects that have a stormwater component of them, or that add impervious surface that would then require a stormwater treatment and detention, or also have a funding component from the stormwater utility, which is the 438 capital fund. Of course, that's applicable to the project depending on what the project is doing. That utility fund is an enterprise fund, so it can only be allocated for stormwater improvements. And of course, we love grants, so whenever we can provide an opportunity to submit for a grant application or partner with another jurisdiction, here's a few examples of some recent projects that involve many partnerships with other agencies, including the Lewis-Thompson Road Tightline Project. Since we are looking at the SCIS and the town center sub-area, there are a few capital projects that are included in the CIP. One is an upcoming corridor plan or study. The study produces the final plan for that corridor, which is somewhat very, very similar to a park master plan. As Leigh was describing earlier, this is the vision for that particular corridor and how that corridor could develop and improve over 20 years. That project is set to start, if I recall, in early 27, possibly at the end of this year, depending on staff availability. There's also the 6th Street project and the First Place at 228th. The photo on your right is actually Lewis-Thompson Road. Those are new sidewalks that just went in. As soon as we have final lift on the asphalt, we'll look at striping for bikes, but there is a bike lane that will be added to that corridor as well. This project actually started out as a stormwater project with water quality benefits and flood hazard mitigation, and multimodal elements were added in. At the bottom of the hill, we're also upgrading the traffic signal cabinets. So again, reflecting a handful of the programs that all have multimodal elements and some of the projects in the next 6 years that we built all with multimodal elements. As both Lay and Andrew were describing, all of our project work aligns with the Transportation Master Plan. It's how we implement that vision and goals. This is just a quick snapshot of how all of the projects align with the different 4 goals that are cited in the Transportation Master Plan. And finally, as Lay mentioned, the TMP is a living document. So as we go through updates, regular updates, we add different projects to our capital plan list as well, our 6, 12, and 20-year lists. Listed here are some projects that were identified in either the transit plan that will be identified through the transit access enhancement studies, or the projects that were recently identified in the bike pedestrian mobility plan that will be added into the TMP as well. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Andrew.
Thank you, Audrey. So I'll be talking about sub-area plans and how they fit within the city's transportation planning context, as well as the state planning requirements. So what is a sub-area plan? It is a geographically specific implementation plan of the comprehensive plan. It's essentially a more detailed look at a specific area, going into a greater level of detail than you would in, say, the TMP or the comp plan or other citywide plans. The typical elements are very similar to those plans, though, especially the comp plan, and including a vision, existing conditions and needs analysis, and then looking at the topics you would find in the comp plan as well of housing, land use, transportation, open space, and the environment. And also having a strategy and implementation component as well. You may also have some elements to the sub-area plan that are unique to that area that may be a little specialized for that sub-area plan that you would not maybe find in all other sub-area plans. So how do those sub-area plans function within the city and state context? Just really trying to build up anticipation here. All right, with the city context, as I was saying, it's a supporting document to the comp plan, the TMP, and other citywide plans, but it could also work in the other direction to help inform updates to codes and standards as part of that implementation section. Currently, the town center is the city's only sub-area plan, but there could easily be other additional sub-area plans as needed in the future. Wanted to wrap up this section talking about how sub-area plans operate within the state's planning environment. They are subject to the State Environmental Policy Act and evaluated as a non-project planning projects, and they are subject to the environmental impact statement as part of that. So as part of doing that EIS, they were required to do a summary of impacts and then a consideration of alternatives, similar to what you saw with Town Center. And as I was saying, you could have some unique components to a sub-area plan, depending on that context. Depending on what those components are, some other state laws could apply as well as part of that aspect. So with that, I will turn it over to Lay to talk more about how development can help implement the transportation vision.
Thank you, Andrew. I will walk through the development application review process and kind of just point out tools and controls we use in that process. And okay, so when a development application or development proposal is submitted, from a transportation point of view, the first order of business is concurrency testing. That is testing whether the transportation system has capacity for that specific development. I will have a separate slide for us to dig into a few pieces of details into concurrency testing. But when a development proposal passes concurrency testing, it moves forward in the review process. Any development proposal triggers a threshold of impacts is required to perform a detailed traffic impact analysis. That traffic impact analysis can also include areas beyond the frontage streets immediately next to the development. Identified impacts are required to be mitigated, that is SEPA mitigation. In addition to traffic impact analysis, site design plans go through a rigorous review. Those plans need to comply with Sammamish Code standards and pertinent state and federal regulations. So those 3 steps: concurrency testing or concurrency review, traffic impact analysis as part of the land use action and review phase, and site plan review as part of site permit review phase happen sequentially in the development application review process. In addition to those 3 phases, for any use in our streets or public right-of-way, whether it's temporary use or construction, those must be approved in right-of-way permit. So the purpose of right-of-way permits is to minimize impacts to the traveling public, promote the safety of the community, and protect our infrastructure. For construction work in our streets or other forms of right-of-way, we have inspections performed both during construction and after construction. So impact fees must be paid prior to in-general permit issuance. I'll be talking about how that's related with concurrency testing in a second. Okay. So concurrency, the purpose of concurrency testing is really to ensure new development does not cause transportation facility level of service to decline below standards. That is our code requirement. That is also a Growth Management Act requirement. Every new development must pass concurrency with a few exemptions that are expected to generate no traffic impacts or very minimum traffic impacts. As I mentioned, it's the first step in the permitting process. The developers submit some kind of review fees in order for the city to compensate staff and consulting cost. And then when a development passes concurrency, a concurrency certificate is issued and traffic impact fee is calculated. So only when a concurrency certificate is issued, then the corresponding traffic fee is calculated. So they're kind of, they are both about traffic impacts, but they are separate. Okay, so let's dig in a few pieces of details about the traffic impact analysis. So for the traffic impact analysis is required for any development that is expected to generate more than 10 trips in either morning or afternoon peak hour. The traffic impact analysis is very detailed, include modeling and analysis. It looks at the level of service of vehicular travel at intersections, at approaches, could be specific turning movements, could include queue length at intersections. More importantly, safety analysis is required as part of the traffic impact analysis. For example, site distance for specific site distance evaluation for specific accesses, road safety analysis. In addition, accessibility to all modes of transportation is required to be assessed. When the traffic impact analysis identifies impacts, then a development or the developer is required to mitigate corresponding impacts. There are 2 general options for doing that. One is a developer would implement necessary transportation improvements, or they would contribute to the fair share of cost of cities' identified transportation improvements. There's a team of professionals from multiple disciplines to participate in the development application review process. Of course, we also perform inspections. So city staff works across the city government in multiple departments to collaborate on the development review. In addition, we also work with others, such as the utility district and fire to make sure that emergency access is provided, existing utility infrastructure is protected. So those are just some of the examples. So let's summarize key components in the development application review process for transportation. So a team of professionals work together to within the city and with other organizations to perform a thorough review of development applications. All development applications are required to comply with city codes, standards, and pertinent laws. Traffic impact analysis is very detailed for specific development. Development must mitigate identified impacts either within its vicinity or in the greater transportation system. Development applications are required to build frontage improvements. Think about half-street improvements, sidewalks, bike lanes, and things like that. Of course, there are always exceptions. Access design is a focus of the site plan review. We look at site distance requirements, look at land configurations, and things like that. For any use within our streets or other forms of public right-of-way, right-of-way use permit is required. And inspections are performed both during construction and after construction. So let's take another look in terms of comparing the sub-area plans and development applications. A sub-area plan is a long-term plan looking out for 20 years. Its purpose is, the purpose of transportation analysis is to look at, forecast the future travel demand over the whole network within the sub-area and perhaps a little bit beyond to where it makes sense to stop and can assess the effect of the projected growth on the road network. The process EIS, sub-areas plans, and the outcomes is really a vision of multimodal transportation system for that specific area, as well as transportation improvements and implementation strategies. For a development application, we're really talking about short term, maybe up to 6 years, depending on how long it takes for a development application to happen. And we're talking about kind of zeroing on that specific development, putting a magnifying lens to see specific impacts of that development application. How does it impact its adjacent streets as well as the greater transportation system? The traffic analysis is very detailed. The data is much more current. And then, for that development application, the analysis will identify required mitigations based on the detailed analysis, and then look at how site plans comply with standards, pertinent laws, and things like that. So that's the comparison. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Ben online to provide an overview of traffic modeling.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the modeling toolkit. This might get technical, but it should be fun. Let's start with kind of 3 parts to it. We've got observed data. So this is traffic counts and speed data. This is data about today, data we can go out and collect, or data, that's from the past. This is observed data. This is our ground truth data that we will use to help calibrate and validate the model. On the other end, we have the VZoom travel demand model. This is the long-range forecasting tool that Lay mentioned. It's going to convert land use information, residential units, employment data, square footage of developments into trips, and then those trips are going to be put on the network, and then they're going to become traffic, and then we can look at speeds and volumes and whatnot. And this is going to model, more of the whole city or the region. There's lots of different types of these models out there. PSRC has one for, the whole Puget Sound Regional Council area. There's one for the city of Sammamish, for example. BKR has a model. And then in the middle is traffic operations tools, intersection analysis tools. And the most common tool is Synchro. And that's used for intersections. And Sidra is used for roundabouts. It's a pretty common tool. So what we do here is we just model individual intersections for the most part. And the key input to that is the volumes going through all the different turns. And that's shown here. So you can use, when you do traffic analysis, you can use traffic counts if you have them for today, or you use some kind of model to estimate them in the future. And we're going to talk more about all these things as I go on. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So first of all, the model was developed as part of the TMP, all right? And that TMP effort was certified by PSRC. And during that exercise of building that model, we went through a calibration and validation exercise, which I will show you here in the next few slides. But to kind of make a nicer example, I think, we're just going to look at a little corridor, the 228th, just basically south of Southeast 4th, going up a little bit above Northeast 8th, and look at what Google Maps tells us, look at some data, look at what the model tells us, look at what the Synchro traffic intersection analysis tool tells us, just to make sure things are lined up okay. All right, so we can go to the next slide. So one of the first things we do in modeling is we don't model every day, all day, every special day, every snowstorm, every hour, all that stuff. We just model typical, average, as defined by best practices and industry standards. So what's very common is to just model an AM peak and a PM peak. Okay, and usually the way that's defined is basically based on traffic counts in the area. And so this plot is showing you the traffic counts for the last couple of years across the city, and it's showing you the percentage of the hour of the day of the traffic. So this is saying that the AM 7 to 9 and the PM from 4 to 6 are the peaks, the peak times of travel, and that's when we model them because that's where that pushes our infrastructure the hardest. All right, so let's go on to the next slide. So this is our little test example corridor just to show you. Google Maps is showing us at 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on a Tuesday that the green means sort of typical speeds, average speeds, and then they show that it slows down, yellow here, by East Lake High School, and then kind of in the middle there, right, and a little bit south. Okay, so probably that makes sense to us. So let's go to the next slide. Now we're going to take a little route trace on that corridor and just see what it says. And so it's about a little short of a mile, and it's about 3 minutes travel time. Probably a little less because it's rounding up, maybe more like 2.5, but something like that. Okay, that's our ground truth data for today. So let's go to the next slide. So what we did then is just did a trace inside the travel model for the 2023 model, and we traced it out. It's about 1.5 minutes at free flow travel time or uncongested or at the middle of the night. And when you model it with traffic loading on it, after we do all these steps, I'll talk about how we generate that traffic, we end up with about 2 minutes, 40 seconds and 2 minutes, 13 seconds. So we're showing reasonable delays, slowdowns of a minute, and those seem to be matching what we're expecting from the Google data. If you go to the next slide, we do the same thing here just to show how it works with the Synchro analysis that was done. We pulled the 4 intersections in their little corridor. First of all, we've got the summed travel times for free flow. Then we have the additional delay at the signals added, and then the total times. So there are similar times, 2 minutes 50, the other one was 2:30 or 40 or something. Also on this plot is showing you the delays of all the different movements, which we can look at later. And then also the level of service is shown with the letters in the middle there, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But the point here is that we're modeling pretty consistently with the observed data versus the long-range model versus the traffic impact tools, the kind of time it takes to get through those corridors and those intersections. All right, let's go to the next slide. So it's not, I shouldn't say it's not that hard, but it's easier to model the base here because we have a lot of data. It's a lot more difficult to model the future because the future is uncertain. So that's what the long-range planning tool, the travel demand model, is for. And the travel demand model, most travel demand models follow this same basic 4 steps. So that's what the point of this slide is, which is, first of all, we do trip generation. And that's where we convert the land use data, the estimates for residential units and employment and acres and park acres and things like that, into trips. Those come from trip generation rates, survey data, ITE trip generation manual, and that's described how we used, that was done in the TMP, and it was updated for the city of Sammamish. Basically what that does is basically just says these trips are generated by these households or these employment centers. Now they don't have a destination yet, they're just generated there. Then we need to distribute them. So we need to pick destinations from them. And so there's a gravity model, which basically says the likelihood of going to a destination is a function of how hard it is to get there, the impedance, or the gravitational force between them, and the size of it, right? So big employment center, small employment center is going to attract more, in a functional way to how hard it is to get between them. What's the travel time or the distance? So that's what that step does. The trip generation step works at the AM and the PM period. So we have AM and PM trips. Then we need to choose modes for those trips. Now, in this case, we're modeling just the vehicle trips because we did just vehicle trip generation because there's very little biking and walking for regional impacts like this or for transit. In other models, you have a much more complicated mode choice model, like in Chicago, where you have a lot of subways and big bus systems and things. After you have those vehicle trips and their destinations, then you route them on the network or you assign them to the network. That's why it's called traffic assignment. And that basically chooses routes. And that does that using a model that looks at congestion and capacity. And for more localized applications, such as this model, you would like to have that routing done with an understanding of intersection delay and intersection capacity. It's difficult to do when you do a very large model because you have thousands of intersections. But if you have smaller intersections, then you can maintain some kind of understanding of the intersection geometry and the signal timing and all that. And then you get better routing because those left turns are more complicated, or depending on the geometry and stuff, and the conflicting flows and the volumes and things. So the model then is done, the routes are chosen with an understanding of intersection characteristics. Then you have your routes and you sum up the volumes of all those routes, and that gives you the traffic, and then you can look at the delays. So if we go to the next slide, I just kind of show you a couple steps of how we make sure all those steps work okay. The region is cut up into 267 transportation analysis zones, or kind of neighborhoods, and that's where the travel is generated and then distributed between those zones. And then you also have entry and exit points around the edge where travel comes in and out of the study area. Okay, go to the next slide. The trip generation, this is just showing that the different land use categories have trip generation rates from ITE, which is National Guidelines, big published book. I'll talk about it in a sec on trip generation rates and how they were customized and checked for the Sammamish application. You can go to the next slide. One of the key ways to look at the results of the model is to compare in the base year, or the baseline, or the existing conditions, the traffic count versus what the model estimates the traffic volume to be. So everywhere you have traffic counts, you also look at the traffic volumes estimated in the base scenario, And this is a R-squared plot or a regression, so it should be 45 degrees. That means the volume estimated by the model versus the traffic count are perfectly lined up. They're nice and tight. There's guidelines from FHWA, USDOT on what are acceptable ranges for different types of facilities. This calibrates really well. This validates really well. You've got R-squareds, really good match, and it's nice and tight. You don't have a bunch of funny outliers and things, so it looks really quite good. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So that's kind of how we build up those volumes, all right? And then we do the routing, and we send all those trips through the intersections, and then we need to look at the intersection performance. So there's really a question about how significant is the delay? How significant is significant? So we talk about level of service, and earlier in the presentation, we saw some discussion about what level of service is for multimodal level of service, and I'm going to show you an example of what it looks like for intersections or for vehicles. So you can see here in this picture, you've got a little diagram here that kind of shows you what level of service looks like, what the intersection performance or experience looks like. And then that gets converted into an average delay at the intersection. So for example, if it's 10 to 20 seconds, then you get a level of service B, right? So those then, and it's important to note that it's only the peak 15 minutes of the hour that is analyzed for the level of service. And that's according to highway capacity manuals, which is the national guidebook on traffic impact. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So the city maintains level of service standards. Those are level of service C for intersections that are minor arterials or collectors, and level of service D or E for principal arterials. All right, and those are the standards. So when we go ahead and run the model and do the analysis, we only mitigate if we fall below the standards. So if you go to the next slide, let's look at what the model said, or not just the model, but the modeling toolkit, travel demand model, plus the synchro analysis. So for 2023, then the intersections. This is just our little snippet, just for illustrative purposes, to show you how this works. But they're all okay. They're meeting the standards. And I'm really showing you this plot so I can show you it for the updated scenarios that are coming, the action and no action scenarios. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. All right, so now we need to go to the future, right? So that was just the base year. That was making sure everything works. We now trust the tool because it's doing fine for all the different things that we can model well. So now we're going to jump into the future as best we can. We're going to first take the land use data. This is the land use data from the SEIS. And we're going to take the 25,000 units, which was from the whole region. The no action scenario adds about 4,000 units. The action scenario adds an additional 2,000. And then we're just going to look here to see that, we increased the number of units, and we've got reasonable increases in just the AM and the PM peak hours in the traffic that's generated. Okay, so we go to the next slide. We need to do something now that we didn't do before, which is, in the base scenario, we use the traffic volumes to do the intersection analysis because we could collect those. In the future, we don't have traffic volumes. What we have is a model, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to use this NCHRP, National Cooperative Highway Research Program report, that tells us basically ideas for how to get turn volumes in the future when they don't exist. So basically, what you do is you correct the future estimate from the model with using the difference between the base year estimates. So the turn volumes from the traffic counts versus the turn volumes estimated in the base year by the model, you get the difference, and then you add that to the future year. So if they're overrepresented, you pull them down a bit. If they're underrepresented, you push them up. All right, that allows us then to get our traffic volumes from the model into the intersection capacity analysis tool, or synchro. Okay, now we go to the next slide. All right, so we're in the model now. We do the same thing. This is 2044 no action scenario. We've got our travel times, our free flow travel times, and we've got new model times, and they're slower. Okay, they've slowed down a bit. That's to be expected. We add a little bit more traffic. Same thing here. We have the free flow travel times. Then we have some additional signal delay because we've added a little bit more residential units, which generated more trips that got distributed and then routed. Then we got a little bit more travel time, so it's about 10%. Okay, and I'll show you the level of services here in a sec. All right, so so in the no action alternative, then the AM intersection level services are the same. In the PM, Main and Southeast 4th drop down one level, but they still are not beyond the standards for mitigation. And then in the action alternative, or no, okay, so yeah. So then we go to the action alternative and we do the same thing, right? So we look at the same trace. It's just a little bit slower on the corridors and the two periods, a little bit slower again. This is all reasonable, expected, makes sense. And we get a little bit more degradation of certain performance at the intersections, but still not exceeding mitigation standards. Okay. And I think my last slide, one more slide. So this is pretty much the way this is done everywhere you go with slight modifications on it. It's defined by, an enormous body of knowledge. I just pulled a few different reports to give you some ideas of things. Highway Capacity Manual is extremely important. Travel Model Improvement Program by FHWA. Lots of agencies and partners. PSRC is a really strong modeling agency in the country and really helps the region a lot. So this is pretty straightforward, and so I hope that's helpful to understand how it works. My only last comment is it's uncertain. Modeling is one of the best ways we can do it in a reasonable, rational, structured way to do our best to estimate and help drive decisions with data and analysis. So. Thank you. That's my part.
Thank you, Ben. I'll just spend a few more minutes to connect the dots and to show how it all fits together. So the transportation vision for our community is really a safe and welcoming multimodal transportation system that prioritize safety and emphasize connectivity and promotes environmental protection. When we look at what's on the ground today and wonder how we're gonna get to turn the vision into the new reality, the task seems very daunting. So it really takes persistent effort over the years. Just keep going. Going down the roadmap, we develop plans that reflect the community vision and priorities. We keep moving forward and seeking funding partners as best as we can, and trying to implement those long-term plans and improve the transportation system over time. This roadmap is sequential, but at any time, there are multiple efforts along the transportation horizon with a mixture of timelines going on. This is a snapshot, a shot of our transportation planning effort between going into 2026 and in 2025. Obviously the 2026 TMP update is a long-term plan. If you look at the citywide capital improvement program, that's 6 years and it's updated every year. So another point that I want to emphasize, we have a variety of ongoing programs and effort underway. We are shifting toward multimodal travel. That's really what our vision is about. But we recognize the role of vehicular travel. We do have a fair amount of programs and effort just to trying to monitor and manage vehicular travel. Example is our annual traffic count program, and we get speed assessment data from a third party. We have the concurrency program, we have traffic impact analysis, and we also have an intelligent transportation system and our transportation management center so that staff can monitor traffic real time on a daily basis. Sammamish is not in a vacuum. It takes a lot of collaboration with stakeholders to get to successes. Partners including our community, council and commissions, as well as cities of Issaquah and Redmond, school districts, King County. Ben mentioned PSRC a few times, and you also mentioned that. So that's Puget Sound Regional Council, transit operators, Washington State Department of Transportation, to name a few that we work regularly with. I know this presentation has been fairly long, and we only scratched the surface of all the happenings of transportation in Sammamish. So we have a one-stop shop for if you want to know more details and dig into some of the plans and work effort. There's one website for you to go to. On that website, I just want to highlight three most important planning documents for us. One is the 2024 Transportation Master Plan, then the newly adopted 2025 Bike and Pedestrian Mobility Plan, and the 2024 Transit Plan. So with that, our presentation is over, and we turn it over to the chair for facilitating the rest of
Couldn't
this
act quite
meeting.
so excited, Leigh, that it's over. And I'm a little dense, but I did enjoy the fact that you used a visual showing roads to talk about transportation. That was nice.
And I just give credit to one of our team members. Her name is Carla. She did an amazing job, like in the past 2 days, and getting this graphics out.
Okay, good job to her, too. Okay, that's quite a bit. For the commission, I want to do a period of some questions. However, the concern I have here is that this could go on for like 3 hours, and I don't want that to happen, and you don't really want it to happen either, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to say we'll shoot for 20 minutes, and we'll go round robin. So one question, Ajay, one question, John, one question, Mark, and then when we get all the way around, we'll go around again, and we'll see how far we get. And then when we get to 20 minutes-ish, we'll kind of cut it off. Because I know that we could go for 2 hours, but we just can't do that, and we got to leave a little bit of time for our other topic this evening. Okay, so remember that's how we're going to go. Pick out your most important question for the first round. Ajay, go.
Well, that sounded like a stop clock going off. I just have one question on the model, and this is a question for Ben. Ben, your model had it as 2023 is the year, and that's fine. Your explanation was great. First of all, the presentation was fantastic. Thank you so much for this. You had it as 2023 as the date, but between 2023 to right now and even early next year, you're going to have two very large companies change their plans to have people come into work, which basically makes your the stress diagram which you had, that stress diagram which you had of A, B, C, D, and E, and F, going to have a lot of stress coming into it, right? The morning traffic is going to be heavy. The evening traffic is going to be heavy. How do you even rely on this one, given that this was 2023 and that was the year when people were working from home largely and had control of their calendars, and 2026 when they're not going to have that control on their calendar and they'll have to all be rushing out down towards Redmond or Seattle to get to their place of work. How do we match these two? And I was going through, as I was listening to your presentation, this kept coming back to me to say, why are we doing 2023 and how is this going to be elastic for 2026 and 2027 traffic?
Audrey, do you want to give a comment on that. I think, the model can be updated for telecommuting and other things like that. It's not uncommon right now in the industry for that to be coming up. But, the data lags quite a bit. That's the hard part is the ITE trip generation rates are based on analysis at lots and lots of sites for lots and lots of years nationwide. So as the data gets updated a bit on travel patterns, then the new data gets published and then goals get updated.
I can add to that in the transportation master plan, we did there was a scenario that looked at return to work. So it was looking at trip generation rates, to Ben's point, that were not a 2023 trip generation rate. So did look out at potentially there being more trips on the road. And that scenario did also not highlight too many additional deficiencies. So it was looked at, and to Ben's point, it is a continual process, right? The traffic count program and concurrency and all these things to continuously track what actually is happening on the roadway too. This is a tool that we're using with the best of our knowledge that we have right now.
Got it. And just to be sure, you're also considering traffic before the pandemic to traffic now after people coming back to work, right? Because then that will mean that you've looked at 2018, 2019 data and compared it with the growth that we are looking at, percentages and all of those things to get to 2026 and 2027 when you're going to combine the two of them and add the additional residents who are going to come into it.
Yeah, it makes sense to look at the traffic trend over multiple years. We have had this annual traffic count program for many years, so we do have that resources. You mentioned a very important factor that more people will go back to the office. Some companies are saying that 100% going back to the office. There are also other factors in the economy that will affect traffic. So we have ongoing effort in place to monitor traffic, and we can respond to drastic trend changes.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
John.
I don't really have any questions per se, just comments. First of all, thanks to transportation staff, Audrey and DKS. Excellent presentation and kept us off interrupting you with questions. That's where we get sidetracked. Also, just a very small thing, but going back to the first iterations of the transportation management plan, a map was shown that didn't connect anything to our park system, and you've corrected that tonight. Thank you. So you're looking at things much more holistically. I realize that's a really small thing, but awareness and follow-up was excellent. And then sort of my last general comment, this goes back to my days when I was the chair of a board of a retirement fund, making me a fiduciary. As a fiduciary, you either are an expert or you ask an expert, because if you try to insert yourself as a non-expert and with financial advice, for example, you create all sorts of liability. Now, I realize it's not quite the same, but I think the principle is that either you're an expert, and we have one traffic engineer on our board here, or you ask an expert. And I think you all demonstrated that tonight. This is really complicated stuff. You got through explanations that people, I think, could understand with demonstrations. I don't know what more you could do without actually getting down with a calculator and crunching numbers. And that might be for Ajay. So thank you again.
My turn. Thanks for the presentation. I think it's really an important topic and probably should be revisited occasionally within the community because it's a hot topic. My question is much more subjective and probably for Wintana and Ben. Maybe there's not a clear answer, but because you work with Sammamish and other places, why do you think that there's such a strong perception in Sammamish that our analysis of the traffic does not reflect the experience of people on the road? And I guess the very related question to that is, are we special, or is that actually a common complaint, comment in other communities? Because we don't necessarily know that, but we all know that that's the common comment here, but it might be useful for us, certainly as a planning commission, as a city council, as whoever, to hear, oh yeah, everybody says that everywhere, that's the way it works. Okay, so that doesn't necessarily mean the model's accurate to some people, but it means that it's a common circumstance that everybody experiences. So kind of two parts. Do you know why we think that, and is that a common thing?
I can give it a go. Yeah, it is relatively common. I think the model is intended, and the operations analysis that we do is really intended to be a large-scale picture of what's going on, and people's individual experiences can vary from the average experience, right? And so one of the reasons I got into transportation and traffic is because it affects people's everyday lives. And if you go to a party and tell somebody you're a traffic engineer, they'll come to you with their problems, right? And so it's natural, right? It's something you're dealing with all the time. And so it is very common. It's a very common reaction. But that's why we do this type of work, is to take it out of an anecdote of an individual experience and look at the data and look at the models. What is it telling us overall, and how do we use that to make decisions, and so hopefully we do that. But yeah, I don't think that you're unique in the challenges that you face, perception versus the data that sometimes the modeling work that goes into it.
Well, I'd like to think we're special, but maybe not in that case.
Special in general, but yes.
Okay, Mike.
Hard to top being special. But hey, so this is going to be two-part. I hope that's okay. They're related. My understanding of what we just went through, that the 2023 data was used to validate the model. So when there's concerns about, wait, you used 2023 data and then, there's more trips now, in some ways that's a little irrelevant, because you said our model's valid based on the 2023 data and all of the analysis that went on there. So is that, you're nodding your head, is that a correct understanding?
One more time with your question, please, part one.
So there's a concern in the community that we've used for the SCIS 2023 data. And we all know that there's more traffic now than in 2023, a little bit more based on that chart, right? But my understanding is 2023 was used to validate the model. And then once the model's validated, it's an accurate or a reasonable representation, then you could use it to look at the no action and the action alternatives with the additional volumes there that are generated. So that, I think that's an important point. And related to that, and this is just elaborating, because I'll get to my comment or question in a second. So when you show 10% increase for the no action and 17% increase for the action alternatives, okay, part of the future state, right? That based off of the 2023, the percent increase is actually going to be less if you had a higher base, like the 2025 traffic volumes. Is that right? I think that's right. Pretty sure that's right.
If 2025 is higher than 2023.
Which it is from that chart that we just had.
I think it's about 1%.
Yeah. So then the question then becomes, is the level of service standards reasonable? Because, and this goes, Mark, to your point, if people are looking at the morning and afternoon peaks and saying, gosh, this takes forever, I'm frustrated with traffic, and you're saying, but we meet the level of standard, there's a disconnect there. And maybe it's because I add 30 seconds at this intersection and 30 seconds at this intersection and 30 seconds at this intersection, and it feels really bad then. Or there's a lot more variation from the mean, which is, so if you were to see the distribution, maybe there's some very long trips in there, and people know those. They remember those. So I guess what I'm saying is that you maybe should think about, is the level of service standards sufficient along the corridors? Because that's where I think we're seeing a disconnect. We're saying, hey, we're not failing our level of service standard. Reality says, sure we are, so consider that.
Mike, thank you so much. That's a great point. I don't know when our transportation level of service standards were established. Maybe David knows, but it's if we take a look at it, we might find out that it's outdated. It's not really aligned with what we actually want to measure from a multimodal travel perspective, including for vehicular travel. So totally see your point.
Or it could be there's a lot more variation, and there's kind of a long tail
right.
on the high side and short side. So
maybe
anyway,
maybe not the travel is not about individual intersections. Yeah, so totally see that point. Thank you for your suggestion.
Just one more thing to add on really quick too, Lays, is the vehicle intersection level of service is one of the many tools, right, that we use to measure the performance of our roadways. So that's just one of many things. So just wanted to add on to that. They were looked at in detail with the TMP update.
Mike, would it be fair to say the model looks at points, but people's perception is based on a cumulative experience?
Absolutely.
Hisham.
I'm going to go by thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's very well detailed and very informative. When it comes to these numbers, I'm going to yield my question to the expert, but I have a different question. So back to the capital improvement program, and when we select a project that we want to do, I'm assuming we will look at how much value will it add to the community. What metrics do we use to come up with the value? So like Louis Thompson, when we say we want to redo Louis Thompson, or we want to add a sidewalk to Louis Thompson, or we want to add a sidewalk anywhere, how do we determine that this one will provide the most value to the community and we end up choosing it?
That's a great question. And of course, I think I had that slide in here and I took it out. We do have our evaluation criteria is on our webpage. It's on the 6-year transportation improvement plan. I don't remember all the criteria off the top of my head. Oh, Andrew has it up. This is fantastic. Okay, thank you. It's a scoring range of 100, and it's based on system efficiency, connectivity, fiscal responsibility, safety, community character, and environmental impact. So that was set a few years ago, and that's something that we move forward. And so that's how we first place a project. If it's not within an ongoing program, it's placed into a project category. So a corridor plan, for example, or corridor project would always score the highest, right? We would maybe never advance beyond corridor improvements. There's needs citywide. And so it's placed into a category that is outcome based. So traffic safety, non-motorized is one category. We have regional projects. We have different categories. And then they're all scored using the same scoring system itself. In terms of kind of some of the outcome that you were looking at in terms of value added for maybe lineal feet or miles of new sidewalk added, we're looking at that with the TMP update. That's part of the performance metrics that we'll be looking at so that we can, that'll be a policy decision that we'll be asking council to make. So what should those performance metrics be so that we can gauge how many improvements are within each project. We have all those details in all the numbers, right? But a lot of cities have those established so that you're looking at either maybe travel times along a corridor. That is, it's not level of service, but just point A to point B. They also have things like pavement condition assessment scoring. So we're looking at that for what should the scores be for our pavement overall. Other examples might be adding a certain number of sidewalks to the multimodal network. So we'll be looking at those in more detail in the next year.
So like the sidewalk, do we look at how many people walk down that road? I know that most of the city roads, they don't have sidewalks. So how do we decide which one takes priority?
Great question. Council just adopted our bike and pedestrian mobility plan. So our priority transportation network for bike and pedestrian is our arterials, essentially, right? So that's where the most travel happens for the most part with multimodal. It's where we concentrate our dollars. We have limited dollars, so we have to prioritize where they're spent. Along those networks, of course, are many of our schools, our parks, our neighborhood centers, right? So those are some common areas, and we have a separate scoring system for those projects too.
All right, thank you.
Syed?
Well, first of all, thank you for the really great presentation, very educational, very lot of good information that you share with us, and thank you and for the entire group. I'm going to start with asking a number of questions from Ben. You use a Synchro, and as you probably know, Ben, one of the problems with Synchro version 12 has a lot of shortcomings. Let's start with some of them. As you know, one of the biggest problems on a Synchro 12 is that it doesn't recognize the upstream cues, even upstream or downstream, both. So did you address that in your analysis? Did you include that as in determination of level of service and the delay at the intersection?
So I didn't do the synchro work. We can go back to Wintana and team for that. But I mean, there are, some issues, of course, with some of the tools, but we did do, follow best practices for all of that.
The second problem with the Synchro is that if you have inadequate turn lane capacity because of the geometrics of the intersection, Synchro doesn't recognize. Synchro says, unlimited green time, unlimited stacking distance for the turning movements. And I don't know if that has been taken care of. A number of intersections in the city, we have that problem. The third one is that the signal progression. I don't know if that has been looked at. Synchro doesn't recognize signal progression. So if you do have two signals, for instance, Southeast 4th and a Southeast 8th, they're relatively close. I don't know if the progression has been looked at it and if there is any progression between the two intersections. Elena, can you...
Syed, we can't be here all night, so
No, but this is
narrow this
one
down,
more.
Please.
Yes, well, nobody asked the technical question, so I'm getting into the technical question.
Okay, but we still have to
Can
watch
you,
the time.
Can you show image 11, please? 11.
Image 11.
Image 11. This is the display that staff shared with the Planning Commission as well as City Council, and I think that a lot of people, they looked at it, and that is the basis for their opposition to and their concern about the traffic studies. So we're telling the public the intersection, the most critical intersection as far as the town center, Southeast 4th at a 228, has a delay of 21.2 seconds, and with the action plan and adding 4,000 dwelling units, it's going to increase by 2 seconds. Now you go to the image 5. You're going to see a series of the pictures that I have took, all in September and October. You're showing southbound 228 approaching either 4th or the Southeast 8th. And I'm wondering if you can really justify accepting 21-second delay when you have this much of a queue. Let's go to the next one, B, number 6. You see the similar kind of number 6.
This one's 6.
Go to the 7. You see, no matter the time of day, again, these are in September and October, and it shows a direction on the southbound 228. And D, number 8. So how can we just, and that's why the people that they drive, they see this. And then we see the display at the City Council that we have 20.2 second delay at the intersection per vehicle. I mean, I'm having a problem to see the disconnect between what I see and what the people they see, and that's probably why there are a lot of people they have so much of a concern about the study. I have more questions, but then we go around if there are more.
All right, I'm going to suggest we go around one more time, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll have to extend the meeting for a second part, but I think it's probably worth it to go around one more time just to see. So Ajay, one more chance.
Okay. Thank you very much. I just have one more question on this thing. Everywhere I saw in your report, it was 8 a.m., 5 p.m. traffic, and all of those things which were used for the modeling, Ben, that you had. Did you consider schools? Because schools have a different time. They're 7:30, 8:30, and so on, and that adds a significant amount of traffic. No matter how much we say multimodal, and I have a kid who studied in East Lake High School, it's a rite of passage for them to take their own car and drive to school. And there is always a Starbucks next to school, and they want to try the Starbucks next to school. So has that been considered? Why are we trying to do it to 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., which sounds more like an outdated office timing?
So the morning peak hour is between 7 and 9, right? What does the data show? It's not only 8. Yeah. Yeah, so we...
Okay, then probably I mistook it from one
Yeah,
of the
so
points.
in the afternoon, like the highest point is later than when the school, yeah.
Yeah, this is what I used, 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Sorry.
This was just an example. That was just an example of what. But this is the data that was used to define what the peak hour was, which takes counts from all across the city, and daily counts, so to understand where the peak hours are, and so focusing on peak hour of the model based on that. If that makes sense.
Got it. Yep. Thank you.
And you touched on a very important aspect of 2 to 8. 2 to 8 serves multiple functions. It's a corridor for people to get to where they want to go. It also needs to be safe access for people to access shops, schools, and things like that. So it's a corridor that serves multiple functions, and we need to balance them all.
John, anything else?
Again, no real questions. I think Mike's point about the tails of the mean, align with personal experience of what Syed just showed on the screen. But again, looking more broadly, we have to understand the entire transportation system. So I don't know how those two things get reconciled. You're always going to get stuck behind a slow bus or a truck sometime. Yeah, it's almost an impossibility for you to forecast the future. But otherwise, I thought your explanations were really good.
Some of those bus drivers are a little rammy, so they sometimes actually clear a path. The one other thing I wanted to ask is I couldn't quite get a sense of how often and how extensive our measurement actually is. So you talk about ongoing monitoring, but how much of the actual in the field monitoring is done? Like, 3 intersections once every 10 years or 50 intersections once a month, or how much data is actually going into this?
I don't remember specifically how many intersections, but we do annual traffic counts. I want to say 50 intersections, but don't hold me to that. I can get a very accurate number back to this planning commission. Our traffic engineer manager is not able to make it here tonight. Yeah, but it's multiple intersections across the city.
Thanks. Go ahead, Mike.
Just to add really quick, we do review those annually. All the information and maps are on our webpage as well if you look at traffic engineering.
So this might actually be for the city council, but before that comment, everybody's thanked you for the presentation. I just want to say, having seen a version of this earlier and then this, the amount of expertise and detail that goes into this was invisible to me, and I'm sure most residents. And so, for the world out there that bothers watching these things, we have a lot of expertise in Sammamish, people doing a really good job, working hard to do the best job they can, and I appreciate that. And so that leads to this comment. There was one of the late slides, the summary slides, had, word diagram or word cloud, and safety and multimodal were the big words. And food for thought, probably for council, because I know you take direction from council, is that maybe it's like efficiency or transportation time or convenience and not multimodal so hard, because that would shift some of your priorities perhaps. Don't know if that would really make that big of a difference or not. It might, but that's the language that I hear from the residents. It's about that transportation time, the convenience, and concerns about that. And multimodal can help that a bit, but there's a lot of challenges in Sammamish around bicycling and walking and everything else. So food for thought, and maybe not for you because you're taking your direction, but for council.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair. It is, multimodal is the future, not just in Sammamish or even the East Side, regionally, nationally. This is where funding, right, opportunities come from. There's a lot of transportation improvement board grants that you have to have a complete streets ordinance, which is entirely focused on multimodal. And the reason why we put the presentation together the way we did is we could have spent 3 hours talking just about vehicular travel and traffic engineering or more. I mean, but it all works together. And so that was the focus of the presentation. And that is, this embodies our transportation vision as well as our goals that are in the comprehensive plan.
Sorry. Leigh, can you hang on one second? Can you do me a favor and extend till 9?
I move that we extend the meeting until 9 o'clock.
I second it.
Been moved and second to extend till 9. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you.
So, Mike, I totally see your point, and this word cloud can totally be improved. It's like taken from the transportation vision as stated in the TMP, but there's one word you might really like. It's explicitly included in the vision language. It's efficiency. So,
Sean?
So when I heard the conversation between Ben and Sayed here about Synchro, the software, the platform, the program that was used, I know that none of them out there in the market are perfect. And they all claim to do everything, but none of them does everything. Is there any other alternative that can be used to validate this or to address the issues that Sayed brought up? So instead of relying on a software that we know has a downside, and we know we applied it to a condition that we know is a problem today, are there any alternatives that we can use to figure out how can we make conditions better? What he's talking about, I mean, I live here. I go through it. I know what he's talking about. I've seen it. I went through it.
Can I
there are alternatives. Well, I can answer, yeah. There are alternatives. Synchro is the most popular, most common tool, but there are a couple different alternatives. And there's also microsimulation, which is a more advanced approach, which takes a lot more time and effort. And but there's different tools that people use.
One thing to add is going back to Leigh and I's slides is, the town center SEIS sub-area plan focuses on a larger area and does the averaging of the intersections level of service wise. When we have development come in, we'll have TIAs that look at a greater level of detail and look at those specific movements, which I've heard a lot tonight about people saying, well, some stuff may be averaged out. So that same software will continue to be used at multiple steps to try to get the more nuanced part of the issues as a specific development proposal.
Okay, Syed.
Let me kind of continue with that discussion. Ben, it looks like that your analysis as far as the calibration based on, which kind of surprised me, you use Google Map, and actually you show the maps. You looked at the links, right, and the intersection. You showed point A to point B. So you gave us an indication, assuming that you believe in Google Earth and that's accurate. It doesn't show what's happening at the intersection. It shows from point A to point B along the segment of the road how good the traffic flowing, right? But if you go through the full calibration, the old-fashioned way that you send somebody to the intersection and verify the accuracy of the data the model tells you versus what you see in the field, as you see in those pictures, you may go back and manipulate the data to show and to reflect the delay at the intersection. I have some simple questions, Audrey. It has nothing to do with the modeling analysis. CIP is a 6-year? Yes. What is the difference between the CIP and the TIP?
Good question. They're the same.
Because some of the slides, they made reference to the TIP, some of them are CIP. That's why I asked that question.
Yeah, good question. So historically, Sammamish has had a 6-year TIP, Transportation Improvement Plan,
right, also
also known as a Transportation Improvement Program, depending on the agency, same thing. Starting with 2024, that was included as part of the citywide CIP. So one and the same, both 6-year outputs. The citywide CIP includes stormwater improvements, parks, facilities, and information technology.
But my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that CIP is not fully funded. Is that there are some projects that you have partially funded, some of them are funded, some of them are not. Is that correct? TIP is like that. I know that.
Everything in the 6-year window is balanced to the 340 fund anticipated revenues. Again, it's a forecast, but anticipated revenues. That being said, projects like Sahali, for example, we know that'll be a phased project over longer than a decade, likely, right? So what is in the CIP is the study part, the planning part, because we don't have a confirmed alternative. Same thing for the other corridor plans. As soon as we have those and then have a recommended and adopted phasing plan for the corridor, those dollars will be added in the out years as well.
And then the other question is that I sent an email to the group asking for kind of solving in order to address the problem that we see as far as the inconsistency between what the residents see that and what the model says. Is there any way that we can do the animation using the sim traffic and then do the animation and show it actually to the people that how the traffic flows? Ben probably can answer that question.
Layer Wintana, do you want to walk through when that would be typically used for an agency? And
is it time consuming? Is that out of the scope of the work or what?
Yeah, a little bit out of the scope of work. I mean, so typically, so Ben mentioned like the microsimulation modeling with VSIM that definitely is used when you have often. We have a more complicated corridor. We're looking at different modal interactions. Maybe when you have a highly congested corridor, and the synchro modeling indicates that you might want to dive into it a little bit deeper. It is generally a lot more expensive. Generally, it would be more on a corridor basis than you would do you wouldn't do a citywide model necessarily in VSIM. It's just not. Maybe fiscally responsible in that. It's challenging to do it all because it takes a lot of additional effort. So we're using the typical tools that you use in these types of models. The VZOOM model being that regional model and the forecast model, and then moving to synchro for your intersection capacity. This is just what is typical practice, general best practices, and so what we've done here.
Yeah, so like, okay, we're getting into way down details. I don't know, like whether everybody wants to become a traffic engineer. I don't want to be a traffic engineer anymore. So sim traffic is part of the synchro suite. So you pointed out some limitations of synchro as a software. So sim traffic would just do the same thing. So I personally think simulation generated by sim traffic doesn't really add much to what we already have
People
down.
can see where the
Yeah.
traffic flow is and where the congestion is. Visually,
Yeah.
you can show to the public.
Yeah, yeah. And then VSIM, as Wintana talked about, is a very different tool. It does like monitor like individual vehicles, how one car follows another. WashDOT uses it when they do interchange justification reports and things like that. So typically it's not used on a sub-area planning project.
Just last thing is that the traffic impact analysis threshold, I think that there was a slide saying 10 trips. This is 10 vehicle trips. That's my understanding, not the total trips.
I mean,
it doesn't say, the slide says 10 trips.
Yeah.
It should be 10 vehicular trips.
Yeah, I'm thinking of 10 vehicle trips.
The model is only.
And yeah,
Since this is a multimodal, but then as far as the impact fee should be vehicular trips. That's pretty much standard.
That part I don't have all the accurate details, so not gonna try to make things up here tonight.
But anyway, again, like what everybody else says, that you've done an excellent job. It's very educational, and I concur with what Mike said. Probably you should make some kind of presentation like this to the city council. That would be a really good, useful thing.
I think we'll probably leave it there. I do want to say that, being selfish, part of my goal is to have the people that are paying attention stop saying, those traffic engineers don't know what they're doing. And now they have enough knowledge to say, that synchro model doesn't know what it's doing. So maybe we've progressed a baby step in the right direction. Audrey, anything else?
Just thank you for the time, and we really appreciate all the questions, like I said, ahead of time, so that we could bring the right type of presentation to you. Like I said, I think we had 75 slides. We probably could have had hundreds if you really wanted to go into that level. So appreciate the opportunity to showcase a lot of what we do, and this is, as Leigh said, just scratching the surface, but thank you for the opportunity.
And having been involved in the city for 8 years, I would encourage that this become a more frequent conversation in the public forum so that people that are paying attention get a sense of what's going on. And there's a lot of people that don't, but those that do, it would probably be helpful.
That sounds great. And I'll just put a plug in for our webpage one more time. It was recently updated, so all of this information, a lot of it is on there. And of course, we'll add this presentation as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. And you too, Ben. Okay, let's move on to our next, hopefully fairly brief topic for this evening. David, you waited through all that and patiently waited, and here we go.
So thank you again to our transportation planning and engineering and modeling team. I really appreciate their taking the time to be here and all the effort they put into that presentation. During past meetings, I've indicated that I am not a traffic engineer, nor am I a transportation planner. That entire outfit is in a different department. So I wanted to highlight that it was a big ask for them to be here tonight. I think it was really important that they present that information to you, and I agree that we should have them visit more often and provide updates on how our modeling is progressing and things that might be changing, et cetera. I am going to share my screen. Bear with me for a second here. If I can figure out where it is, just a minute. Share. Well, which screen here within the screens? So for the record, David Pyle, Department of Community Development, and I am here this evening on the second agenda item for the November 20th Planning Commission meeting. The second agenda item is an update on the Town Center Plan and Code Amendment project. We wanted to provide a brief update on this evening. Previously, we had anticipated continuing in our work on this effort. However, with the transition of our city council, we are pausing work on this. We have directed the consultant team with Framework Consulting to halt their work as of a couple weeks ago, so they are no longer proceeding on any work until we get some redirection from our new city council in the new year. We wanted to provide a project summary to date, as we feel it's important as we transition to sort of remember all the work we put into this, and hopefully that will help inform us in our next steps, and we can use a lot of those resources and information that we've gathered. Not all, no matter where we go with this, there was a lot of really good work put into this so far, and there's a lot of information that we can continue to use. Wanted to remind everyone that we've been through a stage 1, stage 2, and we were in stage 3 when we hit the pause button. Stage 1 went through a background analysis, including existing conditions audit. We identified what our priorities were, and we built a background of technical information. Stage 2 went through identifying what options and alternatives we wanted to move forward with. It included the initiation of a supplemental EIS process, and it also included the production of code concepts. Stage 3 was issuance of a draft and final supplemental environmental impact statement, and ultimately delivery of draft plan amendments and draft code revisions. However, we are halting at this point in order to obtain redirection in the new year. So far, we have had 24 city council and commission meetings on this topic. We've had 3 community open house events, 3 property owner workshops, and a government and public services meeting with our service providers to make sure that they had opportunity to ask questions about the project and make sure that they were able to get the right information from us in order to respond regarding what type of service implications there might be from the proposals that we were moving forward and working on. It is important to highlight that regardless of where we go going forward, there are some fundamental changes that need to be made to the town center plan for us to be in compliance with some key state regulations changes regarding middle housing, regarding parking, regarding accessory dwelling units. There are some things that do need to be changed. When we went through the comprehensive plan update process, we did modify the zoning regulations to implement the new comprehensive plan and to respond to changes in state law for the whole city except for the town center. We did not update the town center regulations because we were working on a parallel path updates to the town center plan, and we anticipated integrating those necessary changes into the town center zoning as part of that process. So we do have some mandates from the state that we do need to account for in the town center plan and code. I think the easiest one is, for any of you that are very knowledgeable on the town center, is the TCE in the town center, which is a very limited area, only allows for 1 dwelling unit per acre, and has a very limited number of limited use categories that are allowed in that zone. Under state law, we are required to allow middle housing, and we likely need to increase the zoned density in that limited zone to at least what is allowed in our other lowest zones. Although in the town center, you might argue that it should be at least R20 at a minimum. That's up for discussion. We're going to be seeking direction from the council on that, seeking feedback from the planning commission and the community on that. That is an example of a change that absolutely needs to be considered. I think another important part, and we've heard a lot of discussion on this as the election unfolded about, are we in compliance? Are we not in compliance? So what is the town center's role in our being in compliance? Well, my answer is we are in compliance. However, it takes a lot of work to remain in compliance. And I think the easiest way to understand that is by thinking about it in terms of opportunity cost. So in order for us to be compliant, we had to show that we had adequate capacity for deeper levels of affordable housing, which is according to the state, and we have to follow what the state said on this one, which is built in the form of low-rise and mid-rise building typologies. So walk-up apartments, 5/1 buildings, generally buildings that are more efficient where you could produce deeper levels of affordability, below 80%. In tonight's agenda bill, we've provided a link to the State Department of Commerce guidelines on this that we had to show we were meeting. And there's a table, I think it's table 13 or exhibit 13 in there. And it shows for high-cost communities the types of housing that you need to produce in order to, or show that you have capacity for in order to be compliant. So we were able to carefully study the city, and we made a determination that between the existing zone capacity of town center, which allows for low-rise and mid-rise building typologies, our existing centers, which are the community business office zones that are existing, which allow for low-rise and mid-rise building typologies, and with a new added area that is known as the, we call it the bonus parcels, but really it's the public and faith-based ownership parcels in the city, that we allowed for an affordable housing overlay on those where you could, in theory, put mid or low-rise buildings, in some cases mid-rise buildings, that we have adequate capacity for our 2,100 unit, not our growth target, our 2,100 unit housing allocation, which is different than our growth target. Thank you, King County. So the issue here is opportunity cost. So as the town center might build out with townhomes, or as other parcels in the city that are our bonus parcels fill in with other uses and are developed and are not available, we are no longer in compliance because our capacity has been diminished for those areas where we could build mid-rise or low-rise buildings. So one of the things to keep in mind going forward is that we have to actively maintain compliance, which means that we every year have to study if we have enough zoned capacity for low-rise and mid-rise buildings where deeper levels of affordability could be placed. Doesn't mean we have to build it as a city, but we have to show that we do that. We also have to show that we have removed barriers and we are providing incentives, and according to the Commerce document, showing how we are providing subsidies for it to be provided. Go study the Mercer Island Growth Management's Hearings Board appeal case, and you'll start to see some of the things that we have to show going forward to remain in compliance. So it's not so much that town center was necessary to do for us to obtain compliance, but it was one of those pieces we were looking at in implementation that would allow us to continue to maintain compliance. Good example is the park and ride parcel where all the taco stands have been popping up. And I think everybody knows where those are. That King County parcel is identified in our bonus parcels overlay, where you could envision that King County could, in theory, redevelop it, put public parking on the ground level, build some apartments over that. But what if King County, and not saying they will, by no means am I saying that, what if they surplused the property to a private developer who put an office building in there? Well, then that land would no longer be available for low-rise or mid-rise affordable housing to go in there, and that would bring our capacity for that type of building down in the city, right? So we have to actively be looking for ways to offset that opportunity cost that's lost over time, right? So hopefully I'm explaining this right. It's this it's actively maintaining compliance, and in 5 years we have to do our first full report out to Commerce and to PSRC and to King County, which is where they really start to look closely with a microscope at what we're doing. So We've got a few years to work through this. There's some wiggle room on how exactly we do it, but I just wanted to highlight that it's not so easy that we're compliant today, we've got a certified comp plan, and we don't need to do anything. We actually have to actively continue to study this and see how we can navigate forward on that. So in addition to that, I really appreciate you giving me a minute to explain that, because I've heard a lot of different spins on that, and I've been trying to think about how exactly do you explain this. So I think in terms of opportunity costs, think about it that way. So this next slide, I think, is one that, regardless of if the town center is focused on 2,000 units or 4,000 units or some number between, the following remain important objectives and is generally the staff wish list. We've been living in this sort of torturous state with the town center for a long time here at the city, where we have a plan that I think is a beautiful plan and it's a great vision, and I really would love to say it's just easily obtainable, we'll just go ahead and do it, but it obviously isn't, because it hasn't really been built. So when we study all the different things and reasons why it hasn't been built, we come up with the list. So regardless of if it stays at 2,000 or you want to increase it, or even if you want all the way to 4,000, these are the things that we think are really important to keep on the front burner. Make the town center a true sub-area plan. It is not really a true sub-area plan right now. I think of it more like a mini comprehensive plan. It is too detailed, it has too much superfluous information, it restates things that are already stated in the comp plan. It really should be operationalized and should be focused on how do you implement this vision in this area. We've talked about that as a body before. We've got some good ideas of how to achieve that. We'd love to hear from you and the community on how to do that. We think it could be distilled down and shrunk down into a much smaller document. We think we need to recalibrate town center's approach to zoning. So regardless of the number of units, I want to call it the village approach, it results in a lot of really expensive infrastructure for not a lot of density. So we're ending up building a lot of pipes, a lot of roads, in order to serve these different distant villages. Whereas if you were to allow the 2,000 units, if you kept it and you consolidated it into one area, it is far more efficient in how it's being built. It reduces the city's cost, it reduces maintenance costs, and it might make the town center more viable. Getting clarification on the role of density in the town center and affordable housing. What is the role of town center? Do we really expect that there'll be affordable housing built there? And if so, how would that actually be achieved? Are we good with the 10% that we're going to get if it just builds as townhomes? If that's the case and the commits that the community wants, ultimately I'm here to really try to understand what the community wants, take direction from the council's objectives, priorities, what we got on the work plan. So, I need to know these things, and then I'm happy to try and find the best way to implement them going forward. We'd like to evaluate zoning and parking requirements. These are, again, it's trying to, some things we have to do to comply with state law. There's some significant limitations that we've talked about on parking going forward. We have to rethink the parking requirements in the code now, because in some cases we can't require it anymore. So we'll have to remove those requirements from the code, as an example. State law. Replacing ambiguous, this is probably my biggest one, the next one as well. These are my two tops right here, is replacing ambiguous and conflicting guidelines and standards, including replacing the town center infrastructure plan, which was, and the interim street standards, with actual street classification concepts and new public works standards. It is really difficult to work on trying to permit or work through issues with town center on a lot of levels. The next is, and we're almost done here too, so I'll plow through these, is reducing the degree of administrative discretion. I'm not always a fan of when it says, the director may determine, or that they can do a deviation or adjustment, or, these different things, because it puts us in a really difficult position where we have to make a call on something, and it might be perceived as favorable to a developer and not favorable to the community, or it might be perceived by the developer to be favorable to the community and not favorable to the developer, and then they'll sue us. So, it's a balancing act, and it's a really difficult place to be, and it keeps me up at night and makes my job less enjoyable, I think, in the end. Replace the unified zone development plan process with a more efficient process. This one is we have this multi-step process in the town center that doesn't really add a lot of value. We think that we could truncate the permit review process if we had better design standards and better code language. And finally, this one I think we've heard a lot about from the community, and you could add a lot of other things onto this last one, is look for opportunities to integrate low impact design, FireWise recommendations, community, the CEPTED type of thing, community safety through design. There's newer, standards that you might see being applied that aren't in our code today that we think we could integrate in that would help us get a better outcome. So with that, this is again the reminder of where we're leaving off, and that's all I have for this evening. I really appreciate the time and listening to my explanations.
Thanks, David. Any comments from anybody?
The one that I like the most is the last one, about let's figure out a way to build them for less. But thank you. Thank you for putting these together.
We'll see where the new direction takes us. We'll have a new work plan, new council priorities, and we'll be looking for ways to understand those, and we'll move forward. I've been through multiple councils here, and I'm happy to take whatever direction I'm given and really try to find the best outcome for the community based on the feedback we're getting, and you all are integral in that.
So, 2 comments. Thanks for sticking with us, because having been involved for quite a while, I can tell you that I understand that this community is a little bit of a ping, I guess that would be pickleball would be a better term now. Back and forth, and back and forth. So, and the other one is the next time that the Planning Commission revisits the bylaws and the goals, we need to make sure and say one of our new goals is to make David's job more enjoyable. So we'll set that as a goal. All right, thanks, David. Anything else? Evan, David, anything? I'll mention that our next meeting on the calendar is December 4th.
One thing I do want to say is that will be a public hearing on proposed code amendments. So we did hear this evening from one of our public comments regarding our 3,000 square foot limitation. We have been discussing as a commission, and we did present to you a code amendment that would modify that. And one of the options that the commission is looking at is eliminating the 3,000 square foot limit on the ground floor, and instead applying that, because we've heard over the years that large buildings that, multiple story large buildings are not really looked upon positively in the community, but that we should not maybe be regulating that on the ground floor. So that's something that could happen as a result of that.
Well, December 4th. All right. If there's nothing else, can somebody move to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Great job tonight, everybody. Thank you, and we'll see you in December.